A misdialed number should mean a quick, sorry, wrong person. For Clara Hale, it meant salvation wrapped in blood and bullets, crawling across a bathroom floor slick with her own blood, skull fractured by the man who promised to love her. She tried to call her best friend Mary. Her vision was failing. She couldn't see through the red. She hit the wrong digit. That call didn't reach Mary. It reached the private line of Massimo De Luca, the De Luca Don. A number that hadn't rung in 2 years. A number that belonged to his dead wife. What happens when a dying woman accidentally dials the most dangerous man in the city? The answer is possessive, unforgiving, and absolutely unstoppable. Because when Massimo De Luca heard those broken whimpers on his late wife's phone, he didn't ask questions. He said 2 words to his men. "Trace it." And when he arrived at that apartment and saw the FBI agent standing over the woman with blood matting her hair, Massimo didn't care about the badge. He didn't care about jurisdiction or federal authority or consequences. Tyler Peterson flashed his credentials and screamed about kidnapping charges. Massimo didn't even look at him. He just walked out the door carrying Clara to safety, while his men made sure Tyler understood something fundamental. Badges don't work in his world. Only power does. She called the wrong number. He answered anyway. Now the FBI agent who tried to kill her is about to learn what happens when you hurt something a De Luca decides to protect. Before we begin, click that subscribe button and comment where you are watching from. I'm responding to everybody. Let's continue. The vase shattered first. Then Clara's world did. She didn't see Tyler's hand coming. One moment she was setting her violin case down in the hallway, explaining why she'd stayed late at rehearsal. The next, her head snapped sideways into the corner of the marble countertop, with a sound like a branch breaking underwater. Dull, wet, final. The pain didn't come immediately. That was the strange part. There was just pressure, immense and wrong, like her skull was trying to contain something it was never built to hold. Then the warmth, blood, thick and copper-tasting, sliding down her temple into her eye. "You think I'm stupid?" Tyler's voice was ice wrapped in rage. His FBI badge was still clipped to his belt, glinting under the kitchen lights. "You think I don't know what rehearsal means? Who you were really with?" Clara tried to speak. Her tongue wouldn't work right. The floor was tilting, or maybe she was. She reached for the counter, but her hand slid through empty air. "Tyler, please!" The words came out slurred, alien. "There's no one. I was just—" His boot caught her in the ribs, not hard enough to break them, but enough to fold her in half, gasping. He'd always been careful like that. Controlled. Federal training taught you where to hurt someone without leaving the wrong kind of marks. "Don't lie to me." He crouched down, and through the red haze drowning her vision, Clara saw his face. Calm now, almost tender. "That was worse. You made me do this. You understand that, right? This is on you." He stood and walked toward the bedroom. She heard drawers opening, heard the mechanical click of something she didn't want to identify. Clara's body moved on instinct, dragging itself across the hardwood on hands that didn't quite grip anymore. The bathroom. 4 feet away. 4 miles. Her phone was in her jacket pocket, hanging on the bathroom door handle. If she could just... Her vision doubled, tripled. The hallway stretched into a tunnel, but her fingers found the doorframe, then the jacket, then the phone's familiar weight. She pulled herself into the bathroom and pushed the door shut with her shoulder. No lock. Tyler had removed it 6 months ago after she'd overreacted during an argument. But he was still in the bedroom. She had seconds. Maybe. Her hands were shaking so violently The phone almost slipped from her grip. Blood dripped onto the screen, smearing across the cracked glass. Mary. She needed Mary. Her best friend lived 10 minutes away. Mary would call an ambulance. Mary would... Clara's thumb stabbed at the screen. The numbers blurred together. She couldn't see, couldn't think through the pressure building behind her eyes like a balloon inflating inside her skull. She hit call. 1 ring. 2. Clara? But it wasn't Mary's voice. It was deep, dark, textured like smoke over gravel. A man's voice. Wrong number. She'd called the wrong. Mary, Clara whispered, because her brain couldn't process the mistake. Couldn't do anything but push out the plea. Please! He cracked my head. Tyler, he's going to... The bathroom door exploded inward. Tyler filled the doorway, something black and angular in his right hand. Clara's vision collapsed to a pinpoint. But through the phone, impossibly far away and impossibly close, she heard that stranger's voice change. Heard it sharpen into something that sounded like a blade being drawn. Location. Now. Then another voice, distant, responding with coordinates she didn't understand. The last thing Clara heard before the darkness took her was 2 words, spoken with the certainty of a man who had never failed at anything. Trace it. The convoy arrived like a funeral procession, designed by someone who'd declared war on subtlety. 3 black SUVs, windows tinted to illegal darkness, engines still growling as they mounted the curb outside Tyler Peterson's building. No sirens, no lights, just the kind of arrival that made witnesses look away and remember nothing. Massimo De Luca stepped out of the center vehicle before it fully stopped. He was a wall of tailored menace, the grey suit doing nothing to civilize the violence coiled beneath it. Tattoos crawled up his neck like they were trying to escape his collar. His men fell in behind him, 6 of them, identically lethal in black suits and dead eyes. 4th floor, east corner, one of them said, holding up a phone with the trace still active. Line still open. No sound. Massimo took the stairs. Elevators were kill boxes, and he hadn't survived 15 years at the top of Chicago's underworld by trusting in closed spaces. His mind was doing something it hadn't done in 2 years, the arithmetic of protection, calculating time, threat, probability of survival. The phone number she'd called belonged to Lucia, his wife, dead 26 months and 13 days. He'd kept her line active because cancelling it felt like killing her twice. Nobody had that number except family, and family knew better than to use it. Until tonight. Until some woman with a voice like breaking glass had whispered about her cracked skull and begged for Mary. The apartment door was open. Massimo's lead man, Dante, went in first with his weapon drawn, cleared the kitchen, the hallway, then stopped at the bathroom door, hanging crooked on its hinges. Massimo looked inside and felt something ancient and merciless wake up in his chest. She was small. That was his first coherent thought. Small and crumpled against the bathtub, blood pooling beneath her head in a dark halo. Her skull had a visible indentation near her temple, the bone structure wrong in a way that made his jaw lock. Whoever did this hadn't just hit her. They'd tried to erase her. She's breathing, Dante confirmed, 2 fingers on her throat. Barely. Massimo crouched and slid his arms beneath her, one under her knees, one supporting her neck with a gentleness that would have shocked anyone who'd seen what he did to traitors. Her head lolled against his chest. Up close, he could see the symmetry of her face beneath the damage, the expensive haircut, the violin calluses on her left hand. Not a random victim. Someone with a life. Someone who played music. Boss, we need to move. Cops'll be here soon. Massimo stood with her cradled against him and turned toward the door. That's when he heard the bedroom closet open and saw the man emerge, mid-30s, trim build, holding his FBI credentials like a shield. "Chicago PD is 2 minutes out," Tyler said, voice steady despite the sweat on his forehead. "Put her down. This is a domestic incident. Federal jurisdiction." Massimo walked past him like he was furniture. Tyler's composure cracked. He followed them into the hallway, down the stairs, his voice rising with each step. "I'm a federal agent. You can't just... She's mentally unstable. She fell. I was trying to help her." They hit the front entrance. Massimo stepped into the night air, Clara's blood soaking into his suit jacket. The SUVs were running, doors open. Tyler burst through the door behind them, screaming now. "I'm federal FBI. Unhand her. I will have every single one of you arrested for..." Dante and Marco moved like a choreographed unit, stepping into Tyler's path, one hand on his chest, shoving him backward. Tyler stumbled, his badge falling from his grip and clattering on the concrete. "Sir, you need to step back," Marco said pleasantly. "Do you know who I am? Massimo didn't hear the rest. He was already at the SUV, sliding into the back seat with Clara still in his arms. He finally looked at Tyler then, really looked at him, and the agent's voice died in his throat. "You're nobody," Massimo said quietly. "And if she doesn't wake up, you're dead." The door closed, the convoy pulled away, and Tyler Peterson stood on the sidewalk, watching his career and his life disappear into the Chicago night. The underground hospital didn't officially exist. No permits, no inspections, no insurance billing codes, just surgical-grade sterile white, buried 3 stories beneath a legitimate medical supply warehouse on the south side. The kind of place where bullet wounds got treated without police reports and questions died at the elevator doors. Dr. Sarah Chen was already scrubbed in when the convoy screeched into the loading bay. She'd been Massimo's personal physician for 7 years, ever since he'd paid off her mother's stage 4 cancer treatment that insurance refused to cover. She owed him her mother's life. Tonight, he was calling in that debt. "Trauma Bay 2, she barked as Massimo emerged with the woman. "What am I looking at?" "Blunt force head trauma, depressed skull fracture, temporal region. She lost consciousness 18 minutes ago." Massimo laid Clara on the gurney with a precision that surprised even him. "Fix her." Chen's hands were already moving, fingers probing the injury with professional detachment, while her mind ran worst-case scenarios. The skull indentation was significant, brain bleed likely, swelling almost certain, and 18 minutes was an eternity in neurotrauma. "I need to scan her first. CT, full cranial series. Then we'll know if..." "No." Massimo's voice was flat. "No scans, no records, no digital footprint. You operate now." Chen's eyes snapped to his. "Without imaging, I'm going in blind. I could hit a hematoma, nick an artery, cause a stroke. She could end up a vegetable or dead. And if you wait for scans, same outcome, just slower." Chen stripped off her gloves and grabbed a fresh pair. "Get her into the OR, now." The operating theater was state-of-the-art, better equipped than half the hospitals in Chicago. Massimo had made sure of that. When you lived by violence, you invested in the infrastructure to survive it. The surgical lights blazed down like a mechanical sun as Chen's team lifted Clara onto the table. "You need to leave," Chen said, not looking at him. She was already calling out orders, medications, instruments, vitals. "I can't work with you hovering." Massimo didn't move. He stood in the corner, arms crossed, watching them cut away Clara's blood-soaked sweater and attach monitoring leads to her chest. Her skin was pale, almost translucent under the lights. Fragile, breakable, like Lucia had been. "Massimo." Chen's voice had an edge now. "Out, or I walk, and you can find another neurosurgeon at 2 in the morning who doesn't mind committing medical malpractice for a crime lord." He took one step toward her. The surgical team tensed. Chen held her ground, scalpel in hand, because she was one of the few people in his organization who understood that fear, without utility, was just noise. "If she dies," Massimo said quietly, "you take her place in the grave." The words hung in the sterile air, like a curse. Chen's jaw tightened. Her anesthesiologist's hand actually trembled as he adjusted the IV line. "Understood," Chen said. Then, softer. "But threats won't save her. Skill might. So let me do my job." Massimo stared at her for 3 seconds that felt like 3 years. Then he turned and walked out, the doors hissing shut behind him. The observation room was separated from the OR by thick glass. Massimo pressed his palm against it, watching Chen's team work with the coordinated intensity of people who knew failure meant more than malpractice suits. They shaved a section of Clara's head, marked the incision site, drilled burr holes into her skull with a sound that made even Massimo's stomach tighten. Dante appeared beside him with a tablet. "Boss, we got a problem. Tyler Peterson just filed an FBI missing persons report. Federal. Says you kidnapped an injured witness." "Let him file." Massimo didn't look away from the window. Inside, Chen was lifting a section of Clara's skull, exposing the brain beneath. "How long until they move?" 6 hours. Maybe 8 if we're lucky. Through the glass, Chen was speaking rapidly to her team, hands deep in Clara's head, navigating tissue and blood vessels with microscopic precision. Clara's heart monitor beeped steadily, stubbornly, defiantly alive. "Then we have 6 hours," Massimo said. "Make them count. If you're still listening right now, help me prove someone wrong. My estranged wife said I wouldn't even reach 1K subscribers, but I believe stories like this deserve to be heard. Help me show her that these stories matter." Let's continue. The surgery took 4 hours and 37 minutes. When Chen finally emerged, blood spattered across her surgical gown. She looked like she'd aged a decade. Massimo was still standing in the same spot, his suit jacket long since discarded, shirt sleeves rolled to his elbows, revealing the full artwork of violence inked into his forearms. "She's alive," Chen said, and Massimo's shoulders dropped 1/2 inch. "I relieved the pressure, evacuated the hematoma, repaired what I could, but she's not out of the woods. The next 72 hours will tell us if there's permanent damage. Brain swelling, cognitive impairment, memory loss, all possible. She might wake up fine. She might not wake up at all. But she's alive. For now." Chen pulled off her surgical cap. "She's in recovery, medically induced coma. I'll keep her under for at least 48 hours to let the brain rest. After that, we wait." Massimo nodded once. Chen left, and he was alone with the ghost he'd been carrying for 2 years. The recovery room was dim, machines providing the only light, monitors tracing Clara's vitals in green lines that spiked and fell with mechanical regularity. She looked smaller now, with half her head wrapped in white bandages, tubes running from her arms, a ventilator breathing for her. Massimo pulled a chair to her bedside and sat, something he never did. Kings didn't sit in the presence of their subjects, but she wasn't his subject. She was something else, something undefined. "Boss." Massimo didn't turn. He knew that voice. Sal Ricci, his consigliere for 15 years, the only man in the organization who could walk into a room unannounced and leave with his teeth intact. "The feds are mobilizing," Sal said, stepping into the doorway but not entering, respecting the threshold. "Peterson's making noise, says you abducted her. They're calling it a kidnapping." Then let them call it that. Sal was quiet for a moment. Then, you want to tell me why we just declared war on the FBI over a woman you've never met? Massimo's thumb moved across his phone screen, pulling up a contact that hadn't been opened in 797 days. Lucia's number. The call log showed Clara's incoming call at 11:47 p.m., duration 2 minutes and 18 seconds before the line went dead. She called this number, Massimo said. Sal stepped closer, looked at the screen, and went very still. Everyone in the family knew about Lucia's phone, knew it was sacred ground, knew that Massimo checked it every night like some men checked for monsters under the bed. Jesus, boss! You thought... For 5 seconds I thought my dead wife was calling me. Massimo's voice was granite. I heard her voice, and I thought maybe, in some fucked up version of the universe, I was getting a second chance. That's what grief does. Makes you stupid. Makes you believe in ghosts. He stood, walked to the window overlooking the recovery room floor. 3 other beds, all empty. Clara had this entire sterile purgatory to herself. When I answered, it wasn't Lucia, it was this woman, begging for help, talking about her cracked skull, and I heard it in her voice, the same thing I heard in Lucia's voice the night she died. Terror, pain, the sound of someone realizing they're about to stop existing. Sal said nothing. There was nothing to say. Everyone knew how Lucia had died. Collateral damage in a hit meant for Massimo. Wrong place, wrong time, wrong life to marry into. She'd bled out in his arms while he screamed for doctors who arrived 8 minutes too late. I couldn't save Lucia, Massimo continued. I was holding her and she was looking at me like I was supposed to fix it. Like I was supposed to be strong enough to keep her alive through sheer force of will. And I failed. He turned back to Clara's unconscious form, her chest rising and falling with mechanical precision. So when I heard that voice tonight, calling the one number in the world that connects me to my failures, I made a choice. His hand curled into a fist. This woman doesn't die. Not while I'm still breathing. Not while I still have men and guns and the capacity for violence. She lives, even if it costs me everything. That's not strategy, boss. That's penance. Maybe. Massimo returned to the chair, sat down, and for the first time in 2 years, folded his hands and prayed to a god he wasn't sure existed. But penance is all I have left. The press conference started at 6 a.m., timed perfectly for the morning news cycle. Tyler Peterson stood at a podium flanked by FBI field office brass, his face arranged in an expression of controlled anguish that he'd practiced in the mirror for 20 minutes. The bruise on his jaw, self-inflicted, carefully placed, photographed beautifully under the camera lights. Last night, my fiancée Clara Hale was violently abducted from our home by Massimo De Luca, a known organized crime figure. Tyler's voice cracked at exactly the right moment. Clara had suffered a fall, a tragic accident. I was attempting to get her medical attention when De Luca and his armed associates forced their way into our residence, assaulted me, and took Clara against her will. The cameras loved it. Injured FBI agent, missing woman, Mafia villain. It was a narrative so clean it could have been scripted. Clara is vulnerable, disoriented, and in desperate need of legitimate medical care. Tyler looked directly into the lens, and for a moment the mask slipped enough to show what lived underneath, something cold and calculating. Mr. De Luca, if you're watching this, return Clara unharmed, and we can resolve this peacefully. Continue down this path, and you will face the full weight of federal law enforcement. Behind him, Special Agent in Charge Morrison stepped forward. The FBI is treating this as a kidnapping and hostage situation. We have multiple agencies coordinating to locate Miss Hale and bring her home safely. Anyone with information about Massimo De Luca's whereabouts is urged to contact our tip line immediately. The questions came rapid fire. Tyler fielded them with the exhausted nobility of a man fighting for the woman he loved. Yes, Clara had been experiencing some mental health struggles lately. Stress from her music career, nothing serious, but it made her susceptible to manipulation. No, he didn't believe she went willingly. De Luca was a predator who exploited vulnerable women. Yes, he would do everything in his power to bring her home. By 7 a.m., Clara's face was on every news channel, a photo Tyler had selected carefully, her laughing at some restaurant, wine glass in hand, looking carefree and beautiful. The caption read, "Kidnapped, violinist taken by Chicago crime boss." By 8 a.m., the FBI had mobilized a task force. By 9 a.m., Tyler was in the surveillance operations center, headset on, watching screens that showed live feeds from drones, traffic cameras, and satellite imagery. "We've got nothing on his usual locations," the tech specialist said, fingers flying across keyboards. "No movement at his downtown office, his residence in Lincoln Park, the warehouse district properties. He's gone to ground." Tyler's jaw tightened. Massimo wasn't an amateur. He'd evaded federal surveillance for 15 years by being smarter and more paranoid than everyone trying to catch him. But Tyler had something most investigators didn't have: complete disregard for constitutional limits and a willingness to use tools that would never survive a court challenge. "Pull up Argus," Tyler said quietly. The specialist hesitated. "Sir, that system isn't authorized for domestic. Pull it up." Tyler leaned forward. "Or I'll have you transferred to the Anchorage field office by lunch." The screen flickered. Argus was NSA-level surveillance technology, a program that integrated every camera, every cell tower ping, every digital footprint in a target city into a single searchable interface. Technically illegal without a FISA warrant. Practically unstoppable if you had the right access codes. Search pattern: medical supply warehouses, private clinics, properties with underground construction permits issued in the last 10 years. The system processed for 18 seconds. Then it highlighted 7 locations across Chicago. Cross-reference with known De Luca family holdings, shell companies and associates. 4 locations disappeared. 3 remained, glowing red on the digital map. "There," Tyler said, pointing to the south side marker. "Medical supply warehouse, purchased through a front company 6 years ago. Underground expansion, permitted for storage. That's where he took her. How do you want to proceed?" Tyler smiled, and it was nothing like the expression he'd worn for the cameras. "I want tactical teams staged at all 3 locations within the hour. Full SWAT deployment, rules of engagement. De Luca is armed and dangerous. If he resists, put him down." "And the woman?" "Clara is a hostage, suffering from head trauma and Stockholm syndrome." Tyler's voice was clinical now. The concerned fiancé act completely dropped. "Whatever she says when we extract her, she's not in her right mind. Make sure that's in the operational brief. She needs immediate psychiatric evaluation and protective custody." The specialist nodded and started making calls. Tyler watched the screens, watched the red marker pulse on the map like a heartbeat. "Found you," he whispered. Consciousness returned in fragments, like a puzzle assembled by someone with shaking hands. First there was white, just white, burning into her retinas. Then shapes, blurred, doubled, wrong. Then sound, muffled and distant, like listening underwater. Clara tried to move and discovered her body had forgotten how. Her limbs were lead, Her head was a balloon filled with cement. Panic spiked through her nervous system, but even that felt sluggish, delayed. Easy. A voice, deep and textured. Male, close. Don't try to sit up yet. Her eyes wouldn't focus. She blinked, once, twice, and the blurred shape beside her bed slowly resolved into a man. Big. No, not big, massive. Shoulders that blocked the light. Dark hair, darker eyes, and ink, so much ink, crawling up his neck like smoke given permanence. Clara's breath hitched. She tried to push herself away, and her body screamed in protest. Pain lancing through her skull so intensely she tasted copper. Clara! The man's hand moved. She flinched, but he only reached for a button on the IV stand. I'm giving you more pain medication. Just breathe. The pain receded to a dull roar. Her vision cleared another fraction. She could see his face now. Sharp angles, thick beard, the kind of face that belonged in Renaissance paintings of warriors. And those tattoos, they disappeared under his collar, reappeared at his wrists where his shirt sleeves were rolled back. Intricate, expensive, dangerous. Who? Her voice was gravel. Her throat was sandpaper. Where? You're safe. He poured water into a small cup, the movements surprisingly delicate for hands that size. You've been unconscious for 53 hours. You had surgery, brain bleed. Do you remember what happened? Clara tried to think, tried to pull memories from the fog. There was music, her apartment, Tyler, and then Tyler. Her heart monitor spiked. The man's eyes flicked to the screen, then back to her. Tyler, she whispered. My head. I know. His voice was gentle in a way that didn't match anything about his appearance. He's not here. He can't reach you. I made sure of that. Clara's mind was trying to catalogue details through the haze of medication and trauma. She was in a hospital room, but it was wrong. Too quiet. No nurses checking vitals every 20 minutes. No hospital sounds bleeding through the walls. And this man, whoever he was, looked like he'd walked out of a crime thriller. She swallowed. I should be at Northwestern, or Rush. I need to. You were dying. He set the water cup on the bedside table. Tyler cracked your skull. By the time I got to you, you had maybe an hour before the brain swelling would have killed you. I brought you somewhere safe. Somewhere he can't follow. The pieces weren't fitting together right. Nothing made sense. But Clara's mind, even compromised, understood basic math. She was alive. She should be dead, but she was breathing, thinking, feeling. And this stranger, with the warrior's face and the impossible gentleness, was the reason why. Who are you? He hesitated, and Clara saw something flicker across his expression, a calculation being made. Then, Massimo. Just the name. Nothing else. But Clara's drugged mind recognized it anyway, pulled it from years of Chicago news reports and whispered conversations. Massimo De Luca, the ghost, the myth, the man the FBI had been trying to prosecute for a decade with zero success. She should be terrified. She should be screaming. Instead, she just felt tired. You're the... She couldn't finish the sentence. Her eyelids were lead curtains. Rest, Massimo said. We'll talk more when you're stronger. Tyler's FBI, Clara managed, fighting the pull of unconsciousness. He'll come. He always... Let him come. There was something lethal in those 3 words. Something that made Clara's hindbrain register safety, despite everything logic screamed. I've been waiting. She wanted to ask more, wanted to understand how a wrong number had led to this, to a Mafia don sitting vigil at her bedside like some tattooed guardian angel. But her body had other priorities. Sleep dragged her under, and this time she didn't fight it. When she woke again, hours later, days later, she couldn't tell. Massimo was still there. He was reading something on a tablet, blue light casting shadows across his face. He looked up when her breathing changed, set the tablet aside immediately. Hungry, Clara's stomach answered before she could. Massimo's mouth twitched, not quite a smile but close. He stood and returned with a bowl of broth, steam rising in delicate spirals. Small sips, he instructed, helping her sit up with hands that supported without gripping, that touched without claiming. Your stomach won't tolerate much yet. He fed her. This man, who looked like violence incarnate, held a spoon with the patience of someone feeding a child, waiting while she swallowed, not rushing when she needed to pause. Clara watched his face, searching for the monster the news promised, found only focus, care, attention. "Why?" she finally asked. Massimo set the bowl aside, met her eyes. "Because you called for help, and I answered." The memories returned like punches, sudden, brutal, disorienting. Clara was eating scrambled eggs. Massimo watching her from the chair he'd apparently claimed as his permanent station when her fork clattered to the plate. "Clara?" But she was somewhere else. She was in Tyler's office 6 weeks ago, standing in the doorway he didn't know was open. Tyler at his desk, counting cash in neat stacks. Tens of thousands at least. His FBI badge next to the money like a paperweight. His voice low and threatening into his phone. "I don't care what you have to do. Make the evidence disappear, or I'll make you disappear." "Clara." Massimo's hand was on her wrist, gentle but grounding. "You're here. You're safe. Stay with me." "He's dirty." The words tumbled out, fragments assembling into terrible clarity. "Tyler. He's been taking money, lots of it, from someone. I saw it, She pressed her hand to her head, careful of the bandages. "He caught me watching. I pretended I hadn't seen anything, played dumb. But he knew. That's why he'd become paranoid. Why every late rehearsal became an interrogation. Why he'd removed the bathroom lock, installed tracking software on her phone. Why that night, when she'd been 5 minutes late, he'd finally snapped. He wasn't just angry," Clara continued, the realization crystallizing. "He was eliminating a witness." Massimo's expression didn't change, but something cold and satisfied moved behind his eyes. "Do you know who was paying him?" "No, but—" Clara's mind was racing now, synapses firing through the medication fog. "There's a key, a safe deposit box. He kept it in my violin case. Said if anything ever happened to him, I should take it to First National Bank on Michigan Avenue, box 2847. He made me memorize the number." "Why your violin case?" "Because I never let it out of my sight. We traveled with it, kept it in hotel rooms. He said it was the safest place for something that mattered." Clara laughed, bitter and sharp. "I thought it was romantic. He trusted me with his secrets." But it wasn't trust, it was insurance. If the FBI ever searched his place, they'd never think to look in my instrument. Massimo stood and walked to the window, his back to her. "There's something you need to know. Tyler's been on television. He's telling everyone I kidnapped you, that you are injured and confused, and I'm holding you hostage." Clara's stomach dropped. "What?" "He filed federal charges. There are task forces looking for this location. They think you're here against your will." He turned, and his expression was careful, neutral. "You're free to leave. Right now, if you want. I can have you at the nearest hospital in 20 minutes. They'll take you into custody, reunite you with Tyler, and this ends." The eggs turned to concrete in her stomach. "You're giving me a choice." I'm telling you the truth. Something he never did. Clara looked down at her hands. The violin calluses were still there, proof of thousands of hours spent chasing perfection in music while living in a nightmare she'd convinced herself was love. She'd made excuses for Tyler's moods, his control, his anger, told herself that federal agents were stressed, that she needed to be more understanding, that if she just tried harder, he'd be the man she'd fallen for again. But that man had never existed. There'd only been Tyler, collecting insurance policies and eliminating threats. If I go back, Clara said slowly, he'll finish what he started. Maybe not today, maybe not next week, but eventually I'll have another accident. Fall downstairs, car crash, gas leak, something clean and tragic. Yes. And the key. Whatever's in that box, that's why he can't let me live. Probably. Clara met Massimo's eyes, saw no manipulation there, no coercion, just a question waiting for an answer. The news says you're a criminal. I am. That you hurt people. I do. But you pulled me out of that bathroom. You saved my life when you had no reason to. Massimo moved back to the chair, sat down with that incongruous grace. I had a reason. You called a number that mattered to me. You sounded like someone I failed once. I won't fail twice. Clara thought about the box. About Tyler's dirty money and whatever evidence he'd been stupid or arrogant enough to keep. About the fact that the FBI couldn't help her because Tyler was the FBI. My violin, she said. Where is it? Your apartment. Tyler has it. Then we need to get it back. Massimo leaned forward. That's not a decision to make lightly. If you help me, you're choosing a side. His people will come for you. This gets dangerous. Clara touched the bandages on her head, felt the ache of the skull Tyler had fractured, remembered the sound of his boot against her ribs. It's already dangerous, she said. The difference is, you're not pretending to be something you're not. Tyler wears a badge and breaks skulls. You break skulls and don't apologize for it. Right now, I'll take honest violence over righteous brutality. Something fierce and approving flickered across Massimo's face. Then we get your violin, and we end this. Chapter 8. Siege on the estate. The alarms started screaming at 4:47 a.m. Clara jerked awake, her head still wrapped in bandages, the stitches pulling as she sat up too fast. Massimo was already moving, crossing the room in 3 strides, phone pressed to his ear. How many? His voice was ice. A pause. Then we're out of time. Execute Protocol 7. He turned to Clara, and she saw it, the shift from the gentle caretaker to the man who'd built an empire on violence. Get dressed now. We're leaving. Clara's hands shook as she pulled on the clothes someone had left folded on the chair. Jeans, a dark sweater, boots. Through the walls, she heard shouting. The metallic click of weapons being loaded, footsteps running in organized chaos. What's happening? Tyler found us. Massimo was checking his own weapon, a matte black pistol that looked like it belonged in a military armory. Federal tactical teams, 3 entry points. They're breaching in 90 seconds. The building shuddered. Somewhere above them, glass shattered. Then the gunfire started, rapid, professional. The sound of trained operators laying down suppressing fire. Clara's ears rang with it, her rebuilt skull screaming in protest. Dante burst through the door. Boss, East Corridor's compromised. They're using battering rams on the reinforced doors. 5 minutes, maybe less. Get her to the south tunnel. Marco's waiting with the car. What about you? Massimo chambered around. I buy you time. No. Clara's voice cut through the chaos, surprising even herself. I'm not leaving you here. Clara, you saved my life. You think I'm going to run while you die, holding off the FBI? She grabbed his arm, felt the muscle tense beneath her fingers. There's another way. Tyler wants what's in that safe deposit box. We give it to him. We don't have it. Yes, we do. Clara's mind was racing, adrenaline burning through the medication fog. I lied. About where the key was hidden. It's not just a key. There's a micro SD card taped inside the violin's F-hole, under the soundboard. Tyler showed me once, said it was emergency backup. Bank records, wire transfers, names. Everything he's been doing. Massimo stared at her. Your violin is in your apartment. No. Clara pulled out her phone. They'd returned it to her yesterday. Scrubbed clean of Tyler's tracking software. She opened the cloud storage app, fingers flying. I'm a musician. I document everything. I photographed the inside of my violin last month for insurance purposes. High resolution. You can see the card in the image. She thrust the phone at him. Massimo looked, and even in the dim emergency lighting, she saw his expression change. There, barely visible in the shadow of the instrument's interior, was a small black rectangle taped to the wood. If we leak this, Clara said, Tyler loses everything. His badge, his protection, his ability to prosecute you. He becomes the criminal. Another explosion rocked the building. Tear gas hissed through the ventilation system. Clara's eyes immediately began watering, her throat closing. Masks! Dante was already pulling gear from a locker, tossing gas masks to them both. Massimo secured Clara's mask first, then his own. Through the transparent viewport, his eyes locked on hers. If I do this, there's no going back. You'll be an accomplice, a traitor to federal law enforcement. I was never loyal to them. I was loyal to a lie. Clara's voice was muffled but steady through the mask. End this. Now. Massimo pulled out his own phone, connecting to something. A secure network, Clara guessed. His fingers moved with practiced speed, uploading the image, routing it through layers of encryption and anonymous servers. Sending it to every news outlet in Chicago, he said, and to the FBI director's personal email, and to the Justice Department's Internal Affairs Division. He hit send. Done. The gunfire intensified. The building's power cut out. Emergency lights bathing everything in blood red. Through the walls, Clara heard the FBI tactical commander's voice, amplified through speakers. Massimo De Luca, this is your final warning. Release the hostage and surrender, or we're coming in. Massimo's phone buzzed, then buzzed again, and again. Messages flooding in from his network. Confirmation that the files were spreading, that news editors were opening emails, that the evidence was already being verified and uploaded. Tyler's carefully constructed narrative was burning down in real time. Boss? Sal appeared, breathing hard, rifle in hand. They're at the inner doors. 30 seconds. Massimo looked at Clara one more time. She saw the calculation happening, the odds, the angles, the probability of survival. Then he made his choice. Drop weapons, he ordered. All of you. We don't fire unless they fire first. Boss! That's an order. Massimo set his pistol on the floor, hands raised. They want a hostage situation? Let's give them one, but on our terms. The doors exploded inward. FBI tactical operators poured through in perfect formation, laser sights painting red dots across every surface. Clara stood frozen, hands up, Massimo beside her, as a dozen assault rifles found their targets. Don't move! Tyler pushed through the operators, still wearing his FBI windbreaker, his face twisted with something Clara couldn't quite name. Triumph? Desperation. Then his eyes found Clara, alive and standing, and his expression crumbled into pure rage. You're supposed to be barely conscious, he hissed. Clara pulled off her gas mask, met his stare, and smiled through the tears streaming down her face. Surprise. Chapter 9. Justice served cold. Tyler's radio crackled to life before he could speak again. Agent Peterson, this is SAC Morrison. Stand down immediately and exit the premises. You are relieved of command. The tactical operators exchanged glances. One of them lowered his rifle fractionally, hand moving to his own comm device to confirm the order. What? Tyler's hand flew to his radio. Sir, I have the suspect in custody. I have Clara. You're about to do nothing, Peterson. Your credentials have been suspended pending investigation. Federal marshals are en route to take you into custody. Morrison's voice was pure, bureaucratic ice. I strongly suggest you don't make this worse. Clara watched Tyler's face cycle through confusion, disbelief, then dawning horror as he pulled out his phone. The screen lit up with notifications, news alerts, all of them showing the same headline, variations on a theme. FBI agents' secret bank accounts exposed, and federal corruption scandal, and agent accused of evidence tampering, wire fraud. His fingers trembled as he scrolled. Clara could see it from where she stood. Images of bank statements, wire transfer records, names of criminals who'd mysteriously escaped prosecution. Everything Tyler had been stupid enough to document and arrogant enough to keep. No. Tyler's voice was barely a whisper. No, this isn't. Clara, what did you do? I called for help, Clara said simply. Just not from you. The lead tactical operator lowered his weapon completely. Agent Peterson, we need you to come with us. Now. She's lying! Tyler's composure was shattering like ice under a hammer. She's been manipulated. She has a head injury. She doesn't know what she's... Agent Peterson. The operator's hand moved to his sidearm, not drawing it, but ready. Don't make me repeat myself. For a moment, Clara thought Tyler might actually comply, might let himself be taken peacefully, processed through the system he'd corrupted, face the consequences like an adult. Then she saw his eyes shift, calculating, desperate, searching for an exit that didn't exist. He lunged, not at the operators, at Clara, hands reaching for her throat, face contorted with rage, moving with the aggressive training the Bureau had drilled into him. But he never made it. Massimo moved like a force of nature, stepping between them with a speed that shouldn't have been possible for someone his size. His fist connected with Tyler's jaw, a sound like a baseball bat hitting meat, and Tyler's trajectory changed mid-lunge, his body spinning sideways before crashing into the wall. The operators raised their weapons again, but Massimo had already stopped, hands up, standing between Tyler and Clara like a wall. He's all yours, Massimo said calmly. Tyler staggered to his feet, blood streaming from his nose, something wild and broken in his eyes. He looked at the operators closing in, looked at Massimo, looked at Clara, saw his entire world collapsing. You did this, he spat at her. You destroyed everything. For what? For him? Clara touched the bandages on her head, still covering the place where Tyler had fractured her skull, had tried to erase her from existence. No, you did this. I just made sure people knew about it. The operators moved in, grabbing Tyler's arms, pulling them behind his back. He fought them, still screaming, still trying to spin some narrative where he was the victim. But his radio was dead, his badge was suspended, and his secrets were already spreading across every news network in the country. They dragged him out, still struggling, still protesting his innocence, to people who'd already seen the evidence. His voice faded down the corridor, swallowed by distance and justice. SAC Morrison's voice came through the tactical commander's radio. DeLuca, Miss Hale, you're both being detained for questioning. Separate vehicles. We'll sort this out at the field office. Clara expected Massimo to resist, expected violence, expected another standoff. Instead, he simply nodded. Of course. After you. He glanced at Clara, and something passed between them. An understanding, a promise. Tell them everything. The truth. All of it. Clara did. Spent 6 hours in an FBI interview room, a lawyer Massimo somehow provided, sitting silently beside her, while she walked federal investigators through every detail. The abuse, the corruption she'd witnessed, the night Tyler had tried to kill her, the wrong number that had saved her life. They had doctors examine her injuries, photograph the healing fracture, document everything. And when they compared her testimony to the evidence spreading across the internet, to Tyler's own carefully kept records of his crimes, the narrative became crystal clear. By sunset, Clara was released. No charges, no federal custody. Just a victim who'd survived, and a criminal who'd been stupid enough to document his own downfall. 3 months later, Clara stood on the balcony of Massimo's penthouse, the Chicago skyline stretching before her like a promise. Her hair had grown just long enough to cover the scar that traced her temple, though she didn't always hide it anymore. Some marks were worth keeping visible. She lifted her violin, the same one, retrieved from her old apartment, the micro SD card long since removed, and its contents already destroying lives that deserved destroying. Drew the bow across the strings and played something she'd written in the weeks of recovery. Something dark and beautiful and scarred but surviving. Behind her, Massimo listened from the doorway, a tumbler of whiskey in his hand, watching her play in the golden hour light. When she finished, he crossed the space between them and pulled her close, careful of the healing bones, always careful. Tyler's sentencing is tomorrow, he said quietly. 23 years federal. Good. Clara set the violin down gently. And us? Us, Massimo repeated, like he was testing the weight of the word. Federal investigation cleared me of kidnapping charges. Turns out rescuing someone isn't a crime. The rest of my business? He shrugged. They're still looking. They'll always be looking. And that doesn't bother you? I've been a ghost for 15 years. I'm good at it. His hand came up to trace the scar on her temple with impossible gentleness. But I'm not a ghost anymore. Not with you. Clara leaned into the touch, into the man who'd answered a wrong number and declared war for a stranger. I called the wrong number. No, Massimo said, and kissed her forehead where the bone had been broken and rebuilt and made stronger in its healing. You called exactly who you needed to. The city spread below them, indifferent and glittering and alive. Clara picked up her violin again and played while the sun set, while Massimo listened, while the world kept spinning. She'd survived. They both had. And some wrong numbers, it turned out, led exactly where they were supposed to.